as we continue our study of this book. Now, we've seen over and over again that the book of Judges is an excellent place to get bad examples from. Amen? We've seen over and over again that instead of giving us spiritual heroes and spiritual giants, what the book of Judges really presents to us more than anything else is spiritual anti-heroes and bad examples. But before we get into any of that tonight, let me share something with you that I really, really love. Subway sandwiches. Our service tonight is brought to you by Subway. But no, you know what I love about going to Subway? You pick everything that goes on your sandwich. Now, sometimes they'll use a knife with mayo on it, and you have to gently correct them. But most of the time, you get to pick exactly what goes on your sandwich. If you like lettuce, you get lettuce. If you like tomatoes, you get tomatoes. You decide, you make it your way. Well, we live in a time when we can get a lot of things exactly the way we want them. We live in an age in which we expect personalized choices in almost everything. So the question for us tonight is, can we approach God this way? Will He allow us to worship Him on our terms? Will He permit us? Will He tolerate us demanding to Him what should be done, how life should be conducted, how worship should be celebrated? Can we cling to any hope of a made-to-order religion in which we decide for ourselves what works for us, what's right for us? Can we have God on our own terms? Beloved, let me say this with unqualified clarity and passion. The world would accept God if they got to choose exactly what He enacted, enforced, and commanded. They want God on their terms. They'll be happy to admit some sort of higher power or the existence of some sort of deity if He looks like them. And if we're not careful, beloved, we can be guilty of the same thing, where instead of recognizing ourselves to be made in the image of God, we may begin to construct a God in our image. So what did we talk about last time? We talked about Samson's great weakness. Samson was superhumanly strong, and one pretty girl made him go from super strong to absolute weakling. Here he is ripping gates out of the ground, carrying them to the foot of a mountain. Here he is snapping through, being tied up like they're burnt threads. And then a pretty girl walks by, whether it would be Delilah or the Philistine woman or the harlot. They walk by and he goes, duh, and he loses all of his wisdom. His great weakness was the lust of his eyes. And because of that, beloved, we saw that God, in His sovereignty, allowed that they would take His eyes from him. So what will we talk about tonight? We're going to talk about Micah, not the prophet Micah. We're going to talk about another man named Micah who would steal from his own mother. Now, I don't know about you, but I think there's something particularly heinous about stealing from your own mom. But he does. He steals from her, and then insanity and drama ensues. But then we see that Micah will rejoice that he acquires the services of a genuine Levite. And you see, here's what we see. He is a thief, he is an idolater, he is a compromiser, but now he has a genuine member of the Levite class. So will that validate his self-constructed religion? Spoiler alert, no, it won't. And we'll see that Micah then sets up a religion that suits his perceived needs, his personal desires. And we'll see how that works out for him. But I don't want you to miss this, beloved. I don't want you to miss this. God is God. And if we are to be reconciled to him, we must do that on his terms. Amen? We cannot dictate to the Lord of the universe what he will allow, what he will disallow, what he will tolerate, what he will delight in. He is God, we're not. And so let's talk about this golden, or rather silver, opportunity. In verse 1 of chapter 17, now there was a man of the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver which were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse in my hearing. Let's stop right there. He comes up to his mom and he says, you know that 1,100 pieces of silver? That's a lot of money. All right? It was a lot of money then. It would be a lot of money now. And he says, oh, you know that 1,100 pieces of silver that just mysteriously vanished? Well, you know what happens? When she couldn't find it, she cursed whoever had it. Micah did not want to be cursed, especially from his mother, apparently, because he says this, behold, the silver's with me. I took it. Now, what would you do if somebody came up to you and said, you know what? I just took $1,100 out of your purse, ladies. All right? If someone came up to men and said it, you'd probably say, I don't have a purse, but whatever it is, your wallet. Would you do this? You'd say, oh, wow, you're something special. You're great. No, you'd probably want to hug them and squeeze until they pass out or call the cops. This is what she does. It's mind-boggling. She says, and his mother said, blessed be my son by the Lord. She understood that he was being honest, that he was fessing up to it, that he was owning up to it. And then she does this. He then returned the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother, and his mother said, I wholly dedicate the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son. And if you stop there, it's beautiful. She says, look, this money was stolen from me, but it got back to me, so I want to dedicate it to the Lord. Well, keep reading, beloved. To make a graven image and a molten image. Now, therefore, I will return them to you. Answer me. What's better, to have money stolen or to have that money constructed into a false god? It would have been better if she never got her money back. She says, I want you to take this money and I want you to make a false god with this money. Wow. Now notice that she asked the silver to be used to not only for these false gods, but for an ephod, and we'll get to that later. But notice what happens. Micah then sets up his own religion. Now, let's ask this. Wasn't this shrine to the Lord? The answer is yes. But Micah and Micah's mom wanted to add false gods to the worship of the Lord. They wanted to have a place where Yahweh was worshiped, but also these false handmade gods. So let me ask you this. Will God tolerate that? Is God okay with us worshiping anything as long as we also worship him? Well, beloved, the answer is clear. The answer is no. God will not share us. He is a jealous God. He will not share us with other gods. He's a righteous God who demands to be worshiped singularly. When we worship the Lord as one of multiple gods, friends, we don't worship him at all. And notice what happens here. Verse 5, and the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household idols and consecrated one of his sons that he might become his priest. Do you see what he did here? He started his own religion. His son became the priest, and he set up all these idols to worship. Now, if Samson's fatal flaw was the lust of his eyes, Israel's fatal flaw was idolatry. They could not stay away from false gods. They were almost addicted to them. And notice then how the author of Judges assesses the situation. He says this, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. That's the theme of the book for us this time. That they were doing right in their own eyes. Now all of that changes. It gets worse when Micah stumbles upon a genuine Levite. Now notice, he made his son a priest. His son had no right to be a priest. Only Levites and descendants of Aaron were allowed to be priests. And he decided on his own, from now on, my kid is going to be a priest. And you know what happens? By God's providence, a real, genuine Levite wanders into his vicinity. Notice what we find here in verse 7. Now there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he was staying there. Then the man departed from the city from Bethlehem to Judah to stay wherever he might find a place. And as he made his journey, he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. Now imagine this. You're a Levite. You're supposed to earn your living in the service of God. But Israel apparently was so horrible in their idolatry at this point that he had to wander around looking for work. So he wanders into the presence of Micah in the hill country of Ephraim, and Micah says, you know what? It's funny. You're a priest looking for work, and I just started a new religion looking for a priest. It's a match made in hell, right? It's double idolatry. Notice, Micah in verse 9 said to him, where do you come from? And he said, I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to stay wherever I may find a place. Micah then said to him, dwell with me. Now notice this, and be a father and a priest to me. And I'll give you 10 pieces of silver a year, a suit of clothes, and your maintenance, that is your room and board. So the Levite went in. It's a pretty sweet deal, right? The man who would steal silver from his mother has no problem throwing money at a Levite in order to support his false church. Verse 11, the Levite agreed to live with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. So Micah consecrated the Levite. Notice that. Micah consecrated the Levite. He had no right to consecrate anybody. He consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in the house of Micah. And then 13, then Micah said, now I know that the Lord will prosper me, seeing I have a genuine Levite. Oh, Micah, how silly he was, and how silly we are as well. He thought that having a genuine priest, a genuine Levite as priest, would make God bless him. We can't make God bless us. He's God. What's the Levite doing? He was trying to make a living. What advantage does Micah thinks he's gaining? That he would now be able to add a genuine priest to his religious collection. Oh, beloved, we think that we can make God move by having bits and pieces of real religion. God is not impressed. He is not subject to us, and we will see how it works out for him. There's a famous saying that says, easy money is money easily lost. I don't know that that's true, but I'm willing to try it. If I ever get any easy money, I'll see how easy it is to lose. But the idea is that we all want to win the lottery, even those of us who don't even play it. But the idea is that easy money, that money that's easily gained, is also easily lost. Now notice the Danites, the tribe of Dan, in curiosity in chapter 18, verse 1. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and in those days, the tribe of the Danites was seeking an inheritance for themselves to live in. For until that day, the inheritance had not been allotted to them as a possession among the tribes of Israel. So the sons of Dan sent from their family 5 men of their whole number, valiant men from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out the land and search it. And they said to them, "Go, search the land." And where did they stumble? Where did they come? They came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and they stayed there. Now here's the thing. They're there and they hear this man, and he talks like a Bethlehemite, like an Israelite. And they say this, verse 3, when they were near the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young man, the Levite, and they turned aside and said to him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place?" And in verse 4, he said to them, "Thus and so has Micah done to me, and he has hired me, and I've become his priest." And they say, "Well, inquire of us, is it going to go okay for us?" Well, what are they planning to do? They're planning to attack these people and take their life. Take their houses, take their land, take everything. In verse 6, the priest says, "Yeah, do it. God is on your side." So we notice at first that they asked him to inquire of God, and he said, "Yes, God is with you." And this led them to conquest. In verse 7, it says, the 5 men departed and came to Laish and saw the people who were in it living in security, after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and secure. Now, I want you to notice something that I think is really telling and really awesome. These Danites come and they see a perfectly happy society. They see a group of people who are perfectly content. You know why they were perfectly content? Let's look in the verse. The Bible tells us, "For there was no ruler humiliating them for anything in the land." You see that? They managed to live peacefully because they were not oppressed by evil rulers. Now, why is that important? It's important for this reason, that's also the reason why they will be wiped out, because they didn't have anybody defending them. They were happy, and the Danites come and wipe them out. They come and take their place. Now, I want you to see this. They come back and they say, "Yes, this is going to be great. It'd be awesome." They were separated from one another. They were isolated. But then this text provides us with a list of other towns. You can look that up later. You'll notice then in verse 14, the Danites make their way there, and notice what happens. In 14, then the 5 men who went to spy out the country of Laish said to their kinsmen, "Do you know that there are in these houses an ephod and household idols and a graven image and a molten image?" Now here's what you're thinking, right? You're thinking they're coming and they said, "Look, there's a false house of false worship here. There is a corrupted false church. Let's wipe them out." But no. Look what happens. It says, "Now, therefore, consider what you should do." And they turned aside and came to the house of the young man, the Levite, the house of Micah. And they asked him, "How's he doing?" Verse 17, "Now the 5 men who went to spy out the land went up and entered there," look at this, "and took the graven image and the ephod and the household idols and the molten image, while the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men. What just happened? They stole his idols. So let's put it this way. Remember how Micah got the silver in the first place? He stole it. So they stole the silver that he stole and returned to his mom to make false idols. What goes around, what? Comes around. Now the very silver, that he stole is now stolen by his enemies. And the very curse that his mom pronounced on him is about to be realized. The money that he stole became his idol, and now his idol was stolen as a result. And so the Levite reads the writing on the wall. And at first he was indignant. He says, "What are you doing?" Verse 18, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" Verse 19, they said to him, "Be quiet, be silent. Put your hand over your mouth and come with us." Now notice what they say. "And be to us a father and a priest." Remember that? That's what Micah said to him. Be our priest now. Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man or to be the priest of a tribe and a family in Israel? And the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod and the household idols, the graven image, and he went along with them. He thought it was his lucky day. He's like, you know what? I used to be in the service of one corrupt man who created his own false system of worship. But now I get to serve an entire tribe of corrupt men who have created a false system of worship. What goes around, what comes around. The same man who's willing to compromise his life for his living is the same man who will leave Micah dead in the water and go with the enemies of his life and family. The same untrustworthy, compromised Levite who will compromise his principles for room and board is the same one who will allow the enemies of Micah to rob him blind and go with them. We see then the Danites are corrupt people. Now, Micah doesn't like this. In verse 22, notice what it says. When they had gone some distance from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house assembled and overtook the sons of Dan. I love this. And they cried to the sons of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, "What's the matter with you? And you've assembled together." Look what he says in verse 24. "You have taken away my gods, which I made, and the priest, and have gone away. And what do I have besides?" Micah was like, "You took my money." How does it feel, Micah? Because that's how your mom felt when you robbed her blind. What goes around comes around. So he goes on to say, "So how can you say to me, 'What's the matter?'" The sons of Dan say to him, "Don't let your voice be heard among us, or else fierce men will fall upon you and you will lose your life." And incidentally, that's what happens eventually. They're slaughtered. So then we see in verse 28 that the Danites are corrupt and they massacre the people of Laish. They rebuilt the city. They did all these things that you can read later. They renamed the city. They took it. See what happens here? They worship the gods that they stole. And they become guilty of the very same sin that Micah had done. And they set up their own false priesthood, just like Micah had done. A genuine Levite. As if that matters at all. God says, "I desire obedience, not sacrifice." He says, "I want you to love me, to revere me, to obey me," not simply erect religious systems. So what do we learn by this, beloved? What are the conclusions or applications? First of all, there is no honor among thieves. A man who would steal from his own mother should expect some divine retribution. He brought in a false, corrupted priest and then trusted him. He should know better. Secondly, God is not impressed by genuine Levites if they're used for false worship. During the medieval times, churches thought they honored God because they had bone fragments, allegedly, from a saint. And they would worship them, or at least close to worshiping them. They would think that God loved them, accepted them, because they had the supposed bones of a supposed saint. And God says, I don't care. I want your hearts. Worship must be pure because God deserves it. In Malachi 1:11, I love Malachi, the only Italian prophet, Malachi. He says this, for from the rising of the sun even to its setting, my name will be great among the nations. And in every place incense is going to be offered to my name, and a grain offering that is pure, for my name will be great among the nations, says the Lord. In Malachi, he says this, oh, that you would shut your doors to keep you from offering fake worship to me. Worship must be pure because God deserves it, and worship must be pure because God commands it. In Psalm 2:11, it says, worship the Lord with reverence and rejoice with trembling. And the main message we get from this passage is simply this: God will not be worshiped or served on our terms. God is not Subway. We can say, God, I love your doctrine. It's beautiful. So I'll take the doctrine. I don't want your morals, though. Or we might say, God, I love your morals, but I don't really care about the doctrine so much. Or we might say, God, I love the fact that you sent Jesus to die in my place. I don't want to follow him, though. Could you give me the blessings, and I'll figure out later whether I want to take the responsibilities. As if God is so desperate for followers that he would corrupt his own nature to get them. Beloved, he won't. He won't. God is God, and we're not. He will not give his glory to another, Isaiah says. He will not defer to our whims. He will not defer to our desires. He will not defer to our demands. And when we meet him, and he says, why should I let you into my kingdom? We can't say, well, because I have bone fragments from a supposed saint. Or I have that cool little Jesus fish on my car that used to be really prevalent. I'm kind of glad they're not as common anymore, just because Christians are bad drivers too, and it made my job harder. Kidding, kinda. We might think because we have the trappings of religion that we've trapped the Lord of religion. We haven't. God does not call us to sit down with him and figure out terms that we can both agree on. God says, lay down your weapons of rebellion, repent, and come to me. In closing, I want to read Malachi 1:6-10. I know if the Lord keeps me here for any length of time, before too long, I'm going to teach through Malachi, because I know I say it every week, but it's true. It's one of my favorite books in the whole Bible. Notice what God says in Malachi. A son honors his father, and a servant his master. Then if I'm a father, where's my honor? If I'm a master, where's my respect? Says the Lord of hosts to you, O priests who despise my name. But you say, how have we despised your name? Look at this. You are presenting defiled food on my altar. 'But you say, how have we defiled you? But you say, how have we defiled your altar? 'But you say, how have we defiled your altar? 'But you say, how have we defiled you? 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 'But In that you say the table of the Lord is to be despised. But when you present the blind for sacrifice, is it not evil? And when you present the lame and sick, is it not evil? Why not offer it to your governor? Would he be pleased with you? Or would he receive you kindly, says the Lord of hosts? But now will you not entreat God's favor, that he may be gracious to us? With such an offering on your part, will he receive any of you kindly, says the Lord of hosts? And then verse 10. Oh, that there were one among you who would shut the gates. Hebrew word here, shut the doors, that you might not uselessly kindle fire on my altar. I am not pleased with you, says the Lord, nor will I accept an offering from you. We may be guiled into thinking that a corrupt, compromised approach to God is better than nothing. It's not. God deserves better. Dear Heavenly Father, we don't come to you because we have a collection of religious relics. We don't come to you because we have enough religious external faithfulness to feel like we're better than other people. We don't come to you because we are faithful to the traditions. We come to you because you have determined that the death of your Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, could be applied to us. A genuine priest. And so, Lord, I pray that we would not seek to compromise with you. If there's someone here tonight who does not yet know you as Lord and Savior, would you please stir them to lay down their weapons of rebellion and to offer a no strings attached ceasefire. That they would hit their knees in their hearts and ask you to receive them. And for those of us who are already saved, Lord, help us not to love any gift more than the giver. Help us not to love anything created more than you who created it. Fill Calvary Bible Church with your Spirit. Teach us to love your word and to hate our sin. Lord, I pray that you would break the stubborn hearts in our midst. That you would break the stubborn hearts in our chest. That you would show your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. You're dismissed. Have a great week.